I see the property market is becoming more and more sensitive to sustainable properties. Furthermore, many global companies have to, where possible, occupy green certified accommodation. So landlords are or will have to concentrate on providing green certified buildings, or they are going to see rental values reduce, and likewise their investment values. As an indication to this, in the UK, landlords of not new commercial buildings will have to, by April 2018, upgrade their buildings if the building's energy performance certificate does not meet certain thresholds. It will be illegal to rent out accommodation in buildings that don't meet the minimum energy threshold. And I see this being enacted in many other countries globally. In Bulgaria, there are few green certified buildings so far. Many local companies don't have the experience of working in such buildings. However, international companies represented in Bulgaria are familiar with the effects of occupying green certified buildings and will try and find, where possible, a building to occupy. One of the questions that is often asked is, what are the extra costs for building a certified building? And our feeling is that as long as the decision to build a certified building is taken at inception, the costs are very minimal, maybe 1 to 2%. However, the savings of a certified building throughout its life for maintenance and operations are significant. The benchmark used in the United States shows a 25 to 30% saving compared to a conventional building. Another question that is always asked: what are the costs of certifying a building? A LEED certification is in the region of $10,000 US. Yes, you need a consultant, and that consultant's fees will be in the region of about 50,000 euros. But together, these are quite small, relevant to the total construction costs. Yes, there will be some extra soft costs for architects, engineers, contractors, project managers. But with good communication between the team, these should be kept to a pretty low limit. What is the big difference between conventional buildings and certified ones? The big difference is primarily in implementing a modern building with systems that were designed and are integrated processes to be efficient in the use of all the utilities: water, electricity, gas. A secondary difference is that a building that creates a better environment to work, like temperature control, fresh air, occupants control, and less harmful to the chemicals. What are the savings for a tenant? Obviously, there is energy consumption savings, which are directly reflected in the service charges, common area maintenance charges of the building. And if the tenant is separately billed for their energy costs, they will see an improvement there. There is also an improvement in the comfort for employees, and employees' dissatisfaction with their accommodation reduces, but productivity also increases. Tenant savings usually result from a direct impact of lower utility bills, as I said. Another question that tenants have asked us in our LEED Gold building here at Sofia Airport Centre is, can a tenant certify their interior fit out? And the answer is yes, they can. LEED Green Building Rating System has a category for commercial interiors, which are specifically designed to meet the LEED certification. As I was saying, landlords of certified buildings are always being asked what the savings are, what are the benefits, why am I having to pay more rent to occupy a building? And as I've said earlier, there are many benefits and savings. We see and have seen over the last year a widening of the gap, rental of rents, between certified buildings and conventional buildings. And here in Sofia, Bulgaria, we see that there is a differential of between 5 and 10% higher rents that can be achieved. So this makes it very attractive for a landlord, but it also makes it attractive to a tenant because they are having direct savings of energy costs, and they are having healthier and happier staff. Tenants who have occupied, the feedback that we're getting from tenants occupying our building is that they see the benefits. They see the benefits of being able to open windows and have fresh air, natural fresh air coming in. And it also makes employees far happier that they are not locked in their office with the outside world the other side of the glass. So, in conclusion, I see that developing sustainable buildings is the way forward, is the only way that a landlord can maximize their investment. And with modern occupiers requiring large open plan offices and older buildings being much more difficult to retrofit to get the open space, that building green buildings will bring gold to the developers.
I have one question. Do you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Julian, your company is originating from the United States. You have projects in the UK, and now you're running projects in Bulgaria. Where lie the differences in the legislation? I mean, how the local regulations and business environments affect developers and investors' environmental policy?
Well,
yes.
Sorry.
Yes, it's okay.
No, what I was going to say is that with the certification, BREEAM certification, LEED certification, and the other certifications, there is a trend from the United States through the UK into Europe and into Eastern Europe that the requirements are becoming pretty similar. The big difference is that in Eastern Europe there are fewer and fewer buildings that are meeting green certification. One is seeing the numbers growing constantly. But the legislation requirements are stringent in the UK and Europe. They are becoming more stringent in the USA. And I believe that governments within Eastern Europe are going to start to focus on seeing green, sustainable buildings wherever possible.
I see we have here participants from GRESP. It's a very interesting initiative that certifies the investment portfolios, and maybe they'll join later. And my next question is regarding the don'ts. What one shouldn't do when in his way to getting sustainable. What's your opinion?
Well, I mean, I firmly believe that certification is the surest way to design a building and produce a building that is going to be sustainable. And especially in the eastern part of
last sentences was
no, what I was saying is that I feel that the best way for companies, developers, investors in Eastern Europe is to build to one of the certifications, because that offers a roadmap of the do's and don'ts of building a green, sustainable building.
But there is one thing, there are some voices arguing about the price of such certification. You mentioned that you mentioned some figures, but for some developers it is still too expensive to obtain such certifications. And what do you think about that?
Well, as I said, I can speak about LEED, which is the American certification. In order to apply for LEED certification, one has to pay $10,000 US, and one needs to have a consultant to guide you through from start to finish to getting that certification. And they are, from our experience, very, very worthwhile, because we saw our building going towards a silver certification, but because of the hard work on our behalf undertaken by our lead consultants, they managed to get us from silver to gold. Again, as I said earlier, the costs of a lead or a certification consultant is somewhere in the region of about 40 to 50,000 euros from start to finish. And one has to bear in mind that on a lot of office projects, certainly office projects of the size of Sofia Airport Centre, that is a period from pre-development to completion of sometimes as long as 4 to 5 years. So it isn't a large investment. Again, as I said earlier, the cost, if you are well organized, you have a good architect who understands green sustainable matters, the extra cost for your development may be a minuscule amount. I suggest maybe 1 to 2% at the top end. So it isn't more costly, but the benefits at the end are great.
There is a question in the chat panel. Can we expect to see certified government-owned buildings in Europe?
I believe a few years ago we had some meetings in Greece where this was a bank but with state influence, where they were wanting to retrofit their bank buildings, old buildings, so that it meets one of the certifications. And one is seeing governments in Western Europe, certainly, that are well aware that they have got to lead by trying to occupy green sustainable buildings, and certainly the British government, where possible, are moving to green sustainable buildings. Unfortunately, the seat of British government is in very old and costly to transfer to green and sustainable buildings, but they are looking where possible. And it's going to be a long-term, gradual process. But I believe that governments are going to and have to show where possible that they have moved their accommodation to green sustainable buildings, or that they are getting some form of certification on the buildings where possible that they occupy.
So the general trend is more and more developers to apply sustainability and investors to have their portfolio certified. What are your expectations for the next, let's say, 5 years? How will this trend, this tendency advance? Sustainability, green buildings, and
well, as I have said, I see that there is going to be a gradual process of new sustainable buildings built, and I see that that is the only way that a developer can move forward. They have to, if they are planning to build something now, they have to build it as a green sustainable building. I see that more and more landlords, once they get vacant buildings, that they will be retrofitting them to make them as green, sustainable as possible. And in other instances, where they cannot retrofit, I see that they are going to have to either demolish or, as we see in London often, demolish the building behind and keep the existing facade so that you can have a modern, green, sustainable building behind the historical facade. George, could I just clarify something that I've said? I was indicating costs of certification, etc. And I just want to make it clear that those were the sort of costs that we saw at Sofia Airport Centre. If the building is smaller, the cost will be less. If the buildings are larger, obviously the cost will be greater. What I would like to share with you all, we commissioned a survey of pharmaceutical and IT companies here in Bulgaria to get feedback on what employees, what the staff look for. And one of the questions that was asked was with regard to the ventilation in their offices. And the response, as you can see, of more than 80% of the respondents considered that an ideal office should provide good ventilation. As you'll see from the chart, 82% of pharmaceutical employees and 81% of IT specialists. And air conditioning, 84%, and pharmaceutical, and 9% for IT specialists. Again, natural light was another important thing for these employees. As you see, 85% of pharmaceutical specialists saw that as being important. 81% of IT specialists saw that as important. Another was quiet working environment. Again, as you can see, 76% of pharmaceutical employees saw that as important, and 58% of IT employees saw that as important. Another thing here in Bulgaria, where parking is very important, and people tend to use their own car rather than public transport. Here we saw 40%. Sorry, I just couldn't read what I was saying. 75% of pharmaceutical workers saw that as was important, and 58% of IT specialists or IT employees saw that as important. And then when we come to public transport, being close to their offices, and here in Bulgaria or in Sofia, there is a very efficient metro service which has been built over the last few years. And in the vicinity of Sofia, close to the main airport here in Sofia, the metro line is currently being built and will open early next year. But again, we can see from the survey that a metro stop close to their place of work was 68% of pharmaceutical employees saw that as important, and 58% of IT specialists saw that as important. Another interesting question raised by employees was having places to walk and to relax in the vicinity of their office building. And we have again seen from a prospective tenant that we have been talking to the importance of having a garden. Here at Sofia Airport Centre, we have a park with a garden, with a lake, but the survey results are interesting that 44% of employees in the pharmaceutical industry saw that as being important. And in the IT industry, 46% of employees saw that as important. And I just thought that just to give you a little sight into the responses of this independent survey that we undertook, shows the trend to employees who are becoming more and more important in decision making and what things they want or require or need. And these are the sort of items that we're seeing HR departments pressing for in decision making. So we are seeing developers, more and more developers, trying to provide green sustainable buildings. There are not that many that are currently certified, but there are more and more developers who partway through development are calling in consultants to try and produce a certified building where possible. And if they don't produce a certified building, they produce a building that is meeting some of the requirements of certification.
If we should summarize in few words, sustainability is here to stay. And can you make some final remarks?
Actually, green sustainable buildings are here and will continue to be here and will grow. An important thing to bear in mind from our experience and what we're seeing around the world is that office tenants are wanting to occupy open space. And one is now beginning to see lawyers who always in the past wanted to occupy little rooms and multiple rooms, now moving to an open plan accommodation requirement. And I am aware of two law firms, one in the US and one in London, that have both recently moved from old traditional buildings into modern buildings. Firstly and foremost, for green sustainable reasons, but secondly, because they want to get large, light open plan accommodation. And the trend that we're seeing is that open plan with small breakout quiet rooms for, say, 2 people. One is seeing that the coffee shop phenomena is becoming more and more important in office buildings for departmental, for private meetings outside the office to take place. And also, offices cannot provide meeting rooms of all shapes and sizes and multiple meeting rooms in order to satisfy the requirement of their staff, partners, visitors, etc. So, in summing up, I see modern, green, sustainable buildings being the only way forward in the office market. There are other elements to the property sphere. We've been talking mainly today about office buildings, but I would just like to touch momentarily on, the 2 other leading sectors, which is retail and warehousing. I see retail as a area that there is going to be a lot of change. I see that shopping malls will decline with the rise of e-commerce. I see big box retail taking over from shopping malls, and I see large stores like the Carrefours of this world where you can buy everything, but also how they fit into e-commerce. E-commerce is here to stay, and people, again, for green issues, are looking not to make that regular trip to the shops, to have their groceries delivered, having ordered it through the internet, to have clothing, equipment, and most things now can be delivered to your front door, having ordered them online. But there is a new phenomena that I am seeing, which is this click and collect phenomena, where people want to receive something quickly. And there are some of the department stores in England that are adopting click and collect, because people are always going to go to the shops at some time. They order online, they can collect it in store. But the added benefit for the stores is the impulse buying. People go to collect. Often the click and collect place is at the back of a store, so people have to walk through the store and they make impulse purchases. The other area that I mentioned, which is warehousing, modern, green, sustainable warehousing is going to replace the older warehousing. One is seeing large, and people like Amazon are having 150,000 square meter warehouses, which is full of automation. The only way you're going to have this automation installed in warehouses is to have modern warehouses. And also, I think I'm right in saying that Amazon are going to have warehousing in Hong Kong, where land is very, very expensive. So you cannot have 150,000 square meters of warehousing at one level, they're going to have multi-floored warehousing, which will be automated. And they believe that they can be just as efficient in that way. So again, just really concluding everything, I see everything that is going to happen now and in the future as leading us towards green, sustainable living.